All right, we're live.
We're live.
Yes.
6:30 p.m. on the West Coast, 9:30 p.m. on the East Coast. It's Trampled Underfoot Podcast time. Was that cheesy enough?
No, it was great, actually.
That's great. Okay.
Because that's exactly what is required. That kind of sort of like that energy that you got going there in the tone. I mean, I think you added your own equalization to your voice and compression there. It sounded just like the radio.
That was my AM drive time top 40 radio from the 70 DJ voice.
Video killed the radio star.
Yeah. Big time. A little bit of trivia for those of you out there who don't really care. That was the first song ever played on MTV. Video killed the radio star.
In my mind and in my car.
Right. Before I forget, your lucky number is 19. 19 is your lucky number.
And your secret word of the day is, let me use one word as opposed to a two or whatnot. Like last week, I got, because I was inventing those on the fly. Yeah. But these are going to be, just remember, the lucky number and the word of the day are going to be used at the end of the episode. So keep that in mind. Okay. So the word of the day is Aurora.
Aurora.
I wanted to add Borealis, but I wasn't sure if by adding Borealis, I would have broken my own rule.
Yeah, because that's two words.
And what if I added a little, couldn't I just do a little line in between both of them in order to connect them?
It's not a hyphenated word. No, it's a proper name.
So there's no way around it. There's no escape.
There's no way around it. Mark Lindsay is not a compound or hyphenated word. It's a proper name. It's two separate words. You can have.
How about if I just
Lindsay and Lindsay without Mark? So it's
And even if it doesn't even work, there's no cheating. Is basically what you're saying. I mean, there is.
You can cheat all you want, but I'm going to point it out.
Could you backspace? For those of you in the 1930s, could you just use whiteout and reverse the typewriter and just compound the two words Mark Lindsay, so it's Mark Lindsay?
I know people that talk that way, so it doesn't really.
I get your point. There's no way around the two word, one word.
There are plenty of ways, instead of going for the word of the day, you could use the phrase that pays,
Yeah.
And there's no limit to the number of words.
But that takes pre-planning, doesn't it? And you know how we feel about that.
Not really. If you feel two words coming on, say phrase that pays instead of the word of the day.
No, what I mean by pre-planning is that I would have had to walk down the cellar of my brain, down the steps, knocked on the door of the quick thinking, pulled out that drawer and pulled out that little dossier of Eloy, think on your feet, and use that one.
Well, that's one thing the Army taught me, was how to talk smack on a roll. Just get going and don't take punctuation becomes optional. You have to take a breath on occasion, but you don't make it a deep one because somebody may interrupt you.
Yeah, exactly.
So other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
Well,
too soon?
I don't think it'll ever be.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Too far away. Because, boy, those are big events, right?
Yeah, serious.
And no matter how far away we are from them, as I've become closer to them. And I don't know if this is a problem with aging or with me alone. Maybe all my problems are with it. Actually, they all are. But in my mind, those events, like if you like that you said, I've heard before, right? As kids and stuff, little sayings like that. And I would consider people from back in the day, whatever that means, like 100 years past, 2, 3, right, as a distant frickin' thing, like as something like, and it is, but at the same time, they are, the older I get and the more that I've gotten into history. And by the way, I make no claims of being any history, anything, any knowledge, anything, any of this. I'm just a guy I'm just one of two guys on a what's our saying?
Um, see,
Two
two
guys from
guys,
two different.
different backgrounds, different generations, no, different decade. I don't even remember our own tagline. Two guys from different
Backgrounds
backgrounds, different decades,
and different
on
sides of the continent.
opposite sides of the continent, talking about life, the universe, and everything.
Yes, I'm one of those guys, folks, and Mark Lindsay's the other one of those guys. And I just say for my half, and I think that that he would kind of agree with that, but I don't want to. You never want to put words in other people's mouths. So I'll just say that I am no expert of this, and that. I make no, but I do consider myself an unfortunate or fortunate, but at times at times an unfortunate traveler down roads, not of my choosing, but because I was compelled to travel down those roads in order to explore a certain thing, got lost around there, and I learned a couple of things. So the older I get, the more that history stuff seems not that far away.
It really isn't if you think about it in the grand scheme of things. We're only a couple of generations from a lot of those landmark events. I mean, both of our parents were alive for the end of World War II.
My dad was
Uh-huh.
born during the middle of World War II,
Right.
and my mom was born in 51.
Okay. So your father was, I mean, he may not have been, old enough to really care, but the things that he saw growing up, I mean, he watched a world completely change. His parents saw the whole thing, the end of
Yeah.
World War One and the beginning of World War II,
Yes.
all the way through to completion, I assume. So we're not that far separated from those big events.
No.
And yeah, I made a crude Lincoln joke, but
Oh, I didn't mean to emphasize.
no. But there are certain landmark events that have happened back in the past. The assassination of Abraham Lincoln, the Hindenburg explosion, uh, and it just kind of makes me wonder 50, 60, 100 years from now, what are people going to think about our generation? What landmark events happened in our generation? I can think of a couple, on the good side and on the bad side,
Yeah.
but history is always written by the victors and by the winners, basically. So what are they going to write about our time? Did any landmark events occur?
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, obviously September 11th.
That's the first one that popped into me. To
Right.
me, Mark, to me, and I've said this before. That was a, in my opinion, among other things, a robbing of a nation's certain innocence, in that it was penetrated, the curtain, the boundary, the fence, don't cross over,
Yeah.
was penetrated, and in a way that 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 created a lot of questions. Before that, I believed that anything
Mm.
in airspace with arm, like that idea, the concept, would be completely eliminated, like that, particularly key locations like New York and such. And when that happened, I just, so it was a loss of innocence, and everything that happened afterwards and all that. To me, it was like a timeline shift. It was
Yeah.
huge,
Oh,
huge.
I don't speak for everybody, but I don't think that you would get much argument out of anybody who was alive during that time. It was 19 years ago, but I don't think anybody would argue with you over that. But the same can be said for a lot of the events that happened back then. I mean, the Hindenburg, the Pearl Harbor, You
That
know,
was another event, but not in our time, but more to do
right.
with our grandparents' time.
Right, because we detached ourselves from that. You know, we weren't there. It was ancient history to us. I mean, I watched it on television as the second plane hit live, and they tried to cut away, but they couldn't. You know, so that brought it home. And you're exactly right. It was like it was a paradigm shift, and it was also like a this isn't happening. This is not happening. You know, they can have all the little border skirmishes they want over there. They can fight all they want to, but when you bring it here, you're asking for trouble, and they brought it here.
I mean, so something like comparing the 9/11 event and the Hawaii,
Pearl Harbor,
the Pearl
yeah,
Harbor. Obviously, I wasn't around
right.
during the Pearl Harbor, but I have enough reference points and what that means historically. And by enough, I mean it's slightly enough to sort of like internalize that sort of event, but it's still, if I'm fair, although I understand it for the generation and it got us into the war, so it's like a huge, but it's still more of an important thing because I lived through it. I was, with the 9/11 thing, but it goes to show that we can't, that it's easy for us to sort of like think of history events as slightly not real, but slightly not,
Yeah.
but when in fact it's like as real as
Well,
anything else.
I think a lot of that is a self-defense mechanism because we tend to think of ourselves as matured. We're so much more mature than they were back then. We don't have those little border skirmishes. We don't have people that think or act that way.
Yeah.
And we put ourselves into a sense of denial, you know, that can't be real, you know.
Yes.
People, and there is no good and evil. Well, you know, we found out the hard way that there is. You know, there are blacks and whites. There is not everything is nuanced in shades of gray.
That is true.
So
But there's huge problems too because of that you said. I don't know that those black and whites and not so much in the grays that you're mentioning. I don't know. I don't necessarily know for sure that the people on the opposite side, the more sinister side of things, of which I would want to be on the opposite side of that
mhm,
with the good guys and the good
sure.
things. I don't know that they think, or at least to a degree or another, that they think that they're actually the bad guys themselves.
More's the pity. And more's the pity because you're absolutely right. They think they're doing the right thing.
Which is scary because if it's little things like choosing what burger joint to eat at and which one to avoid, it's a toss up of degrees. It's like, oh well, I don't like the fries in this place, and we could live our lives and have that disagreement. But when it comes to things like, you know
Well,
life, liberty, and such.
I guess my point in all of that, though, is it taught us to be, some of us, not all of us, obviously, but it taught some of us to be less hesitant to call evil evil.
Yeah.
It, you know, we we were, I hesitate to say fooling ourselves, but we had kind of conditioned ourselves to believe that that stuff doesn't happen here. And that, you know, we should see both sides of the story. Well, that's fine if you're talking about something that doesn't affect you. But when they bring it here, you have to take a side. You have to take a side, and you can't be afraid to call things for what they are, and let them call me names. I really don't care. But there is good, there is evil, and you can't be afraid to say it and call it out. That's just all there is to it. I mean, just my opinion. I'm just one guy, and I speak for nobody but myself.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, on one level, since you're saying this, on one level, we have no choice whatsoever but to protect the tribe. There is no I mean, there is a choice. The opposite of that is to not protect the tribe, but it's such a bad equation to make, because the outcomes, we have to protect the tribe.
mm-hmm.
And that means, in our case, let's say the country, right? But if our tribes get smaller as we look at different locations within the bigger, continuum of like the country. And that means, let's say Florida. And then if it's Florida, let's say Sweetwater for me, if it's you over there, Oregon, and then it gets smaller into your areas and stuff. And so we all have to do this sort of scale up, scale down, and we protect what's ours, and the other people are doing the same in other places for their things, but it's the going to acquire more situation,
Right.
that
But your sword is different from your shield. You that's why I've kind of often wondered about striking first out of defense. That you're just going on offense. That's a first strike in defense is an offense. Say it like it is. Say what you mean what you say.
Yeah.
But trying to sugarcoat it.
That is, and I'll be honest with you. I have, doing these shows, and we'd like to welcome everybody here to the show, because for the people that are listening to us on the radio dial podcast form, we do these shows every Tuesday, 6:30 West Coast time and 9:30 East Coast time on YouTube. So that's Trampled Underfoot Podcast over on YouTube. We have a live audience with us as well. And I just wanted to say hello to Odessa Woodworking and Frankie CNC, Harneal Media, as well as Lindsay. And we have a few others there, like Billy Burt and the others as well. We say hello. We're scrolling through here. Anyhow, I was gonna say something, but when I found the end to add that hello and update, I forgot where I had started, and I'm sure it was something that was gonna be great, but it has now escaped me. It's ran down the hallway and hit itself under
so
the table.
Your train of thought has left the station.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
because you said, what is it? The last thing that you said?
I don't remember.
Okay, so we're on the same.
We're on the same page, and we can go in any direction. And see, that's what's fun about this Life Unscripted thing, is because we never know what one another is going to say, what we're going to want to talk about. This, I mean, we're 18 minutes in, and this all started for a stupid joke,
I did want to mention a sort of roundabout topic, but it's a little bit personal towards me. I don't personal, not like personal, like like secret histories and what, but it's personal because it has to do with me. But I found it. It has to do with all of us, but the information I have is with me, and I wanted to just do a little segment just to share it, because I've been meaning to share it with you anyhow, but I have not found the time.
Is this True Confessions time?
It sounds almost like a Madonna video on VHS.
Yeah, True Confessions.
Just a curious thing. So I've the way we met, Mark and I, and all the folks over there in the chat, and many listening later on repeat, we met through the mutual liking of the creative process, woodworking, and all that. video making and such. And there were plenty of groups that were formed in the 2000 and I'd like to say from 2014, 15, 16, 17, and from then on, and we all, we became associated throughout that time, roughly, I think 2016 or 17.
2017, yeah, we all kind of started traveling in the same circles and just kind of bounced off of one another every so often.
Yeah. So, and we've met a lot of people, met each other, and there's a lot of mutual topics and things of interest, and some yes, some no. And back a couple of years ago, if maybe a year and a half or so, Steve Nealon, aka Harnio Media, which happens to sponsor us here in the for the show. So you could go check out harneomedia.com, and they do web hosting, websites. They'll create a web store for you as well. It's a personalized service, and you can check all that out by typing harneomedia.com and checking it out. You can contact him to set up your site or whatever you need. Very easy. So he opened up the possibility of the family tree organization process through Ancestry, and I got into that, and I've been able to organize so many. It's been a great thing, and you guys it's no secret because I always share whatever I find and this and that. But then I decided to do a DNA test, of which when I did it, I had mentioned to the guys that, I want to do it to see if I can connect, because the thing was that you could connect other people, cousins, through matching DNA, of which it's been spectacular. I did that. But then I discovered, once that was done, it was mind-blowing. But then I discovered a few other things, and recently I uploaded the DNA to a thing that will check. It'll give you a limited amount of traits. And I don't know if you've ever looked into that or know what that. I know that you know what traits roughly would be, you could imagine, but I don't know if you know anything about that.
I've not done any serious research into it, no, and I've not done the DNA test. My dad did, but I never have.
So the traits side of it is that in your DNA code, there are, you have all those combinations of boy, I'd hate to say the wrong word. You have all those genes in there, but there's specific words, literature for it, and so they run tests and have been on certain issues, like let's say, your ability to consume milk, mm-hmm. or whatever and so what they do is they run these tests, these control tests, and they'll give a percentage of accuracy or non-accuracy or whatever, or and the amount of people tested, and then they'll try to find that gene that indicates, tolerance for milk or lactose, or things like what we were talking about earlier, sleep patterns and such. Uh-huh. And so I did mine. I put it up, and there's a bunch of they gave me like 30. There's way more. But if it, and so the key about that is that these are markers in your DNA that give you an inclination to said behavior or problem or whatever. It gives you that percentile of probability. Right. We are not, even though that's the case, because you receive from your dad and mom. And it depends on that combination and where those letters line up. It also depends on your ancestry, what right. certain things are potentials for. So all these factors go into play. So you could have a certain combination of genes aligned because of mom and dad that gave it to you, and you could have a propensity for said thing, issue, like, I don't know, whatever. It could be memory loss. It could be just a bunch of things that, like, they've identified. Yeah. A lot of things, and they'll say this shows a propensity and contributes to 20 to 30 or 20 to 60% of your. So basically, the astounding thing of reading through and saying the whole thing is that a large part of who we are, and this is a known thing, but it's different when you see it. A
Right.
large part of who we are and the things that are, let's say, our limits or bounds
Hmm.
or whatever, are influenced in a large degree by our DNA.
Right.
And in other words, it's not just willy-nilly. In my mind, I was always thinking free agent 100% of the time, free agent.
Hmm.
But there's contributing factors on the nurture side as well as the other the DNA side. And to me, that was mind blowing.
And that's been known for quite a while. I mean, heredity plays a major role in a lot of, our makeup. I mean, it has to. I mean, families that they have a high rate of high blood pressure or diabetes runs in the family, or something of that nature. We've known about it for a while. We just have never known how it worked. So
Yeah. So I'll show you the specifics later when we have time because I think it's interesting.
uh-huh.
And I also like to know your act because they say ask your family, ask your friends to judge accuracy from your behavior or your with the things that they can because there's a lot of different, and it's just sort of to gauge and stuff because you could have a propensity for what I'll give you an example here that's kind of I'll give you a benign one because there's some that I was like, oh man, really. There's one, yeah, there was some that and by the way, even though they give you, let's say, an out because you can, although you have the propensity for this,
Doesn't mean
exactly,
it's not rock solid. It's not 100%.
right, it's just a factor. It could be sparked by environmental issues and so on, so there's all these things involved.
Right.
But I'll give you a very benign one, like bitter taste. So they actually, you know what, I don't know if there's there's nothing on the screen except the information, so do you mind me sharing it real quick?
I don't mind if you.
I'll do a quick share here just so you could see it, and this is like the benign one. There's other categories, but
I'll have to edit this out for our audio audience.
oh, that's right. Okay, so I'll just show you this. Okay. Well, no, you can see it, and we could. So as you can see here, this gives you under the category of food and nutrition. If you look at if you can see it at the top, it says higher blood serum level vitamin A. It says I have contained more vitamin A. I don't know whether that's true or not, but according to the genes and how they twin up, it'll give you a different score. Likewise with vitamin D, which is in the middle, bitter taste. Caffeine, metabolizing caffeine, carbohydrate intake, and protein, and so on. Frequency of eating fried dishes, which that's not a truism because I eat way more fried dishes than when it's showing. It's like at a quarter of the dial. If you see, there's like a little dial at the top. And so things like that. But if you click on each one, it'll actually give you. Well, heck, I'll click it. You might have to erase all this from the thing. It'll give you some more detail. And down below, there's a little bit of the literature for the study and whatnot, and it'll say reliability and such. So I found it very interesting. I'll stop with that because it's really not to do, but I found it super interesting. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you.
So my question to you is, how accurate do you think it is? Because I saw there it says you tend to your caffeine intake tends to be lower than average. Do you think that's true?
I think so because I'll drink one cup, maybe two a day.
1 cup, maybe 2 a day. I don't know what the average consumption is, but it sounds like me. I drink 2 cups of coffee in the morning and 2 in the evening.
But I don't drink full. I drink like those small.
Oh, these are super tankers. These are 16-ounce jobbies. I mean,
So you drink full?
Yeah, 2 of them per day.
You see, I drink this halfway twice a day.
You on your, for those of you keeping score at home, on your Mr. Coffee, I make a 6-cup pot in the morning for me and a 6-cup pot in the evening for me.
That's a lot then.
Yeah.
See, because like I said, I'm showing you a Dixie cup.
Okay. But you're also talking about now, do you make coffee like I make coffee, or are you making Cuban coffee?
Well, no, I make American coffee.
Okay.
However, my coffee maker broke,
Okay.
and I drank for a little while there some
Uh-huh.
Cuban coffee. I'd go in the morning and stuff until I said, "Wait a second, I'm
Mhm.
paying for coffee way more than," and I went and quickly bought a new.
Because, and our audio folks can't see this either, because one of your little Cuban coffees is about 3 of these.
Yeah,
So
but you get high on one little Cuban coffee more than you would on that.
that's my point exactly. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No. I mean, truly, I could definitely drink either or. I
mhm.
find this more acceptable. More, I find I like this way better because I'm not a heavy coffee drinker. I would say I decline coffee more than I accept it when at my family's house or whatever.
I don't think I've ever turned down a cup of coffee in my life. I've felt bad about going ahead and taking it, but I just like coffee. So, what can I say? I just like coffee. So if somebody offered, you want a cup of coffee? Well, have you got some? Yeah, you got some made? Yeah, sure. I'll take a little bit. I can't have much or I won't sleep until like April, you know. But oh yeah. It's so, but I was in and around the army for too long. I've had some really excellent coffee, and I've had some stuff that you'd swear you needed a knife and fork for. And anymore, it's just the carrier for the caffeine. But
Yeah.
I still like the taste. So, you know,
I mean, it's nice. It gets the motor warmed up.
it to me, it's a comfort food kind of a thing. Right around 4 in the afternoon, I start wanting a cup of coffee. So I'll brew up a pot and I'll sip on that through the rest of the evening. And in the morning, I don't function without it. I just don't. I mean, I'll come in here and I'll sit down, and while the coffee is brewing, kind of muddle through and just kind of look at Facebook and see what's gone on overnight, and then go back out, make me a cup of coffee. Then I'm ready to sit down and start my day. So,
Yeah. Coffee was an important part of, I'd easily say, of, like, let's say, the Cuban community here in Miami throughout the 60s into the 70s, me being born, and throughout the 80s and 90s and so on. And it still is, but now that I've not my family around, um my thing switched to the American coffee. It did before a little bit when I was a teenager. It started changing, but because it's so heavy duty, the Cuban coffee is basically Italian espresso, and they found any excuse to serve it. If you had visitors, you
yeah,
had either grandma or whoever making coffee randomly throughout the house. People, whether they were reading the paper or sitting out at the porch, whatever the case, all of a sudden grandma would come out with a tray with the little cups, and it was after dinner, after lunch, after breakfast. It didn't matter. After any event that was like a normal daily procedure there, and if you go into like the workplace across South Florida, likewise,
yeah.
people, and not just Cubans, but Cubans are everywhere here, and so uh, there was coffee in the workplace, so you'd have a little bit of coffee in between, any and everything at funerals,
Yeah.
coffee, at just constant coffee everywhere.
I don't know what it is about. No, see, I almost said it's an American thing, but you're telling me that that's also a part of the Cuban tradition. So I don't know where America got it from, but it's strange just how much of a social thing coffee is. Yeah, you can drink coffee at home by yourself all you want, but if somebody comes to the house, boom, a pot of coffee goes on, and you'll sit and you'll have coffee. You'll go out and meet people over coffee. I've had business meetings over coffee. I've been hired and fired over coffee. It's a major social thing.
Yeah.
And I can't really think of anything else, food or beverage, that's that way. I mean, yeah, some guys will get together after work for a beer, but universally, folks would tend to, if you're going to someone's house or if they're coming to your place, coffee is very important.
And a side note to that, and likewise in the let's say broader Spanish community, but I would say that I'm aware of, like I'm just saying that, but that I'm aware of, I know for a fact, obviously the Cuban, not so much, although they do, the Nicaraguan, and I might be, but as far as my experience, the Venezuelans do the same story, but for some reason it comes out different. I was at a friend's house, and they were Venezuelan, of Italian, uh, you know,
Extraction.
extraction, but because people migrated from Europe not only to the United States.
Sure.
For a lot of people out there, they don't realize this, but a lot of people migrated from Europe, Southern Europe, North. It doesn't all across the Americas. Likewise with Cuba and stuff. But these people would do the Italian coffee, and I found that it wasn't the same as the way the Cubans did it, but they used the same pot to make it, like the little
Espresso maker, yeah.
yeah. So they did but it wasn't the same. And so I know that the Venezuelans and a few, so very popular as a social after dinner and so on everywhere. It's but the British, they do coffee, I know, but they have that because of the tea. You won't hear about tea here unless you have some sort of upset stomach or some sort of thing, and they'll do a certain style of infusion / tea, but you won't really it's not as big.
It's not as big, no, but it's still pretty big. I mean, my wife's a tea drinker. And, she used to drink coffee right along with me. But then when were stationed over in Germany, she started having some stomach problems. So she kind of backed off the coffee and started drinking tea. And so we're looking at back in the late 80s, early 90s. And it's been that way ever since. She'll occasionally have coffee, but it's one of those comfort things. It's also, I deem hot chocolate that way too. To me, hot chocolate takes me back to childhood. And every once in a while, I just want a cup of hot chocolate. Don't ask me why. I don't know what triggers it, but it's a comfort thing. Well, coffee is the same with her. Just every once in a while, she'll have a cup of coffee, but she's more of a tea person.
Do you do it with water and the powder, or do you do it with milk and the powder?
Both.
Okay. I like the water for some reason. I like the water and the powder.
It just depends. We don't drink a lot of milk, so we don't generally have a whole bunch of milk around to make hot cocoa with. But yeah, I'll get the milk out, and the little bit of sugar in the pan and a little bit of the cocoa powder and mix it all up and everything if I really want to get hot and heavy into it. But yeah, it's also just as easy to put the kettle on and pour the Swiss Miss in a mug and stir it up and add more miniature marshmallows, I might add.
Swiss Miss or your unbranded Walmart packet, which is about 60 cents cheaper.
Yeah, but I drink so little of it. I figure I can splurge on the expensive stuff,
You are incorrigible.
Well, but see, my cocoa budget for the year is I think $4. So,
Daniel Harju said a funny thing, or at least me thinking. So he says, "Google it. No coffee wars that I can find." Odd. So that is such a truism, or I'd like to think it is. That from that I got, if you had two opposing people of any sort of situation, be it a localized, I don't know, these rioters or whatever the heck you want, or world powers. If
Mhm.
you gave them a cup of coffee during the midst of an all-out, verbal brawl over territory or whatever, the coffee could be the straw that breaks the camel's back
Yeah,
or heals the camel, let's say, uh,
yeah. Just
because you have to drink.
yeah, you just look at the other guy, Starbucks. I'm buying. Let's go, and that's it. Off you go.
I am a big believer.
Now that could start another war because it'd be like Starbucks. Heck no, I'm a Dutch Bros guy. All right, well let's go try that one out. You know.
Yeah, that's funny.
I mean, now wars have been fought to secure coffee. I'm sure.
Well, you're right.
You know.
You're right. Or they've used coffee to smuggle other things, and so they'll use it as a cover
Yeah.
for other type of contraband.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
human beings are, it's that's the whole problem with us, that no matter what, if you think about it, if there's no problem, human beings will find a way to create a problem.
I was
It's like
going to say they'll make one of their own. Yeah.
we always, and when I'm saying this in a broad sense, in a generalized sense, this is not like, because there's always people, eh, it's hard to communicate across the table to somebody, um in many instances, because there's so many, we've talked about this, there's so many places where a conversation can go wrong, even though you're using the same language,
Mhm.
or even if you're on the same side of an issue. There's so many, because words, it's just endless, and our degree of importance given to each word is
Mhm.
also different. It
Yeah.
creates a smorgasbord of freaking possibilities. So it's like we find ways to screw it up inevitably.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah. And that's why I choose not to participate. I'm happy with where I am right now in life. That doesn't mean I don't have ambitions. I do. I I strive to do the best that I can every day and be the best me that I can every day. But if it all ended right now, today, if there was if I couldn't if I didn't think I could progress any further, be that of my own making or something happens, and I can no longer do what I'm doing, I'm fine with that. I've been fortunate enough to travel and see a lot of things. I've met a lot of people. I've made a lot of friends. I've lost a few friends. I've lost a few loved ones along the way too. But I'm happy with who I am, where I am, and what I am right now. And it's enough. It's good enough. Now I still have ambitions and I have a lot of first world problems. And I do my fair share of complaining. But at the end of the day, if I didn't progress any further right now, I could be satisfied with who I am and what I'm doing. So
that's an awesome place to be.
it
You know,
it took 59 years to get here. And a lot of the last 6 or 7 years has been spent just kind of analyzing, okay, you've accumulated and accumulated and accumulated, and you've spent your whole life trying to get to about where you are right now. Are you ever going to be happy and actually start enjoying what you've got? And I made up my mind right then that, yeah, I need to. I need to be a little bit more thankful and grateful for what I do have, and a little less looking over the horizon. And now I say this as I'm trying to build a new shop, but
no, but
but
that's the general consensus
yeah,
of
it's
your.
the general thing. If I don't get the new shop built, I'm perfectly content to go out and continue using what I've been using for the past 7 years. So,
I think, the saying, and this is a very, at least to me, powerful thing, because it has informed me. it's up in the air whether it's a good thing or not. But have you ever heard the saying of um, what is it? If they were something to the effect, this is bad, but the way I'm going to say because I don't have it clear. If I knew then what I know now, that's the correct way. If I knew then what I know now, you've heard the saying, obviously.
Sure.
Um, I think that if people knew when they were kids what they know now, a lot of stuff would not be in play in reference
Well,
to, you know, like conflicts and just a lot of stuff.
to a point, yes. I think a lot of it is the case. But, I don't know about you, but I know I can be told something 1,000 times, but it kind of, it kind of dovetails in with what we were talking about earlier about past history. It's history that can't happen to me. And some people have to learn on their own. You can tell a kid the stove is hot, the stove is hot, the stove is hot. But how many kids burn their fingers every day because they just don't believe it? They have to learn and discover for themselves. And yeah, if I'd have known then what I know now, it is valid, but it shows to me a sign of a little bit of maturity in that everybody makes mistakes, but not everybody learns from those mistakes.
That is a key point.
And it shows that you maybe have learned from some of those errors, or maybe you saw the handwriting on the wall. You saw what was coming and decided to change direction. Because in the end, we do have free will. Now, some things are totally out of our control.
That's a good tie into what we did with the test thing. Because do we necessarily? I think that I believe with you that we have free will, but that's a big question in a way because
we do have free will. We can decide to get up right now and go to the grocery store. We can't control the truck that loses its brakes coming down the hill and goes through the red light right in front of us. There are some things that are within our control. There are some things that just totally are not. So,
well, we have free will within
Mhm.
within our plane of. I think we have free will, or I believe we have free will within the plane of our existence in this three-dimensional,
Sure.
spatial time. But we don't know if there's something other beyond that we are
No,
not.
we don't. But and that's why I say that we can only. Some things are just flat out of our control. I can decide right now to take my left hand and reach over and grab my coffee cup, and I can decide not to.
Mhm.
I'm in control of that. I'm not in control of the car coming down the street. So,
Yeah. Well, with the available information that we have and understand for all intensive purposes,
yeah,
we know. I love it.
call.
That was a little Easter egg there. I wish I had the episode in which that appeared, so we could quickly go bling.
That.
you know, um, but for all we know, we have to go with what we know because it's slightly it's very unreasonable to operate under conditions that we're not aware of, which I think is what I'm saying. So it's like we have to, but one can expand the mind or do the whole conspiracies and such.
Sure.
But that's sort of like another type of exercise. Whereas we are aware that, like you said, you could reach over, grab the coffee cup, or decide not to, but you can't control externalities and stuff. I think with you on that, but I have my little questions on the other side of the thing. Is this all set in motion and such and all that?
I don't know if we'll ever stop questioning because I think, I think I'll stop questioning things when they throw dirt in my face. But some things I just don't find interesting. Some subjects just don't appeal to me at all. So I tend to focus my attention on the things that do interest me. you know. But I got to say, just apropos of absolutely nothing, Kilroy's Odessa Woodworking over there, Al, has been throwing out the song lyrics left, right, and center. I mean, holy cow. We decide which is right and which is an illusion. Come on, man. When you start quoting Moody Blues, you're getting beyond philosophical, dude. Then he backs it up with Douglas Adams. So long and thanks for all the fish. Sounds like a Frood who knows where his towel is. The right people will get that. I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you didn't. That you're right on target. So, you know, I don't know how we got here, but it was good.
Well, you know, we got to keep going because I'm going to have to, all that stuff that we were showing on the screen, I'm going to have to edit that out for the audio folks. You know, so we're going to have to fill some time unless it's going to be a 30-minute episode.
Well, I brought that to the table. Now, what do you got?
What have I got? I have absolutely zero. Like I said, that's life unscripted. You know, a lot of what I do here is react to what you say and react to what subjects you bring to the table. I very rarely bring anything of my own. But, you know, it's worked out for close to 2 years. So, but Al did just made me think of something about the constant quote, not, I won't say constant quote, but the quotation of song lyrics and relating them to real life situations and what have you. We all do it. I think I did it a lot in my teens. I would find depth where there was none meant to be. And just, oh man, this is so appropriate for right now. These words are really, really profound. And they just weren't. They just didn't mean a thing, you know. A womp babaloo bob blop bamboo means absolutely nothing. It's a filler to go between two lines, you know.
Yeah, I never looked into it, but it was just so cool that it's like, yeah, wop babalooba do wop bam boom. Yeah, let's do it. I accepted it wholeheartedly. I thought it was great, but it means nothing.
It's gibberish.
And it doesn't even have to mean anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that was cool. You know, not everything has to, and we kind of do that with our titles sometimes. Not everything has to have the purpose of throwing some crazy thing out there that has no reference or anything.
Right.
Is a way to allow for possibilities to come into play.
Now, let me ask you a question about that. Are you finding, because I'm on the same page with you, I like throwing out non sequiturs like that, just stuff that means absolutely nothing and has no deeper meaning. Like the title of last week's episode was Ipswich Clams, and we mentioned nothing even remotely related to that in that entire episode. It was just something that we threw out there and said, what the heck? Do you think that now with, you know, technology being the way it is, do you think we put too much emphasis on information and deeper meaning? In that, for instance, you look at that title last week, you could infer many things from that title, but there was no meaning to that title. It was just two words we pulled out of thin air. I mean, I don't think we're going to get any blowback on it or anything like that. That's not what I'm getting at. But I'm wondering, here lately, people want as much information as they can get right now, instantly. They want to know what the podcast is about. They want to know what we're going to talk about. They want to know what we did talk about. And the title doesn't give any clues. Do you see that as a bad thing? Or do you see that as just us being us?
The problem with it, I see it as, well, it depends on what, if you're talking about bad for people coming in and tuning in and staying in, I see it as, and we'll be open with everybody, I see it as bad. And in fact, you guys could offer your opinions if you would. over on our Trampled Underfoot Podcast page on Facebook. That's Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook. I think it's, at first glance, I think it's bad because although there's a creative thing to doing that, and it's part of the style because we're open to, randomness, which creates interesting conversations as we always experience on just the most regular, normal topic. Although that's the case, and that's what it's gonna take the person, the listener, through, the general public at large, this is a big assumption, but I tend to believe it because of all the evidence that we see. But I could be wrong. But I think that the general public needs a solid, titled. We are going to talk about flower pruning that occurs at the equator because of whatever. They need that completely written out because that informs them of what they're going to be consuming. And people from the 60s, same thing would apply. Most of them would, but there's a contingency of which I'm a fan of, and I believe you are too, where there's this sort of abstract, loose word association, sort of mystery possibility thing that people, I don't know if it's because of all the drugs they consume. I don't know what the story is, but they had a certain sort of the psychedelic, and are more willing to look at abstract things and find meaning. If they open up the door, they'd find meaning inside the our episodes. But we're using a lot of sort of like key words or key attitudes that they did on a psychedelic, mind expanding, surreal sort of level.
Well, there's some of that, and it's also a bit of playfulness and just trying to intrigue, I guess, more than anything else. Because when we first started, we would sit down and you would come up with the artwork and we would kind of brainstorm over what are we going to call this episode. And you would get, like our first episode, we talked about the Beatles, Woodstock, and a movie called Idiocracy. That was the title of episode 1. And we did that for the first, the first year and a half, maybe. Whatever we talked about, that made up the title. And then we started throwing other things out there and started throwing abstract ideas. And then for a while, you got on song titles or lines from song titles. And we would talk about that. We would try to gear the conversation toward that or around that. Like one of them was Woman Guadalajara Won't Do.
Yeah.
And we spent a little bit of time talking about Steely Dan, a little bit of time talking about Guadalajara itself, but then we went off in different directions from there. So it did kind of tie in, but not really all that much. And here lately, it's been just kind of a free-for-all.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's an evolution of us or if that's an evolution of our style. Or laziness, to be honest with you, because I can see it as several different things. But I'm noticing, and it's other people have noticed, and I've seen it in some of the pop culture out and about, the death of surprise. We like to be surprised until we go to consume something. We don't want a surprise. The title and the thumbnail of a video, for example, has to tell you what's going to be in there, or you just won't click it. So if the video is a cat walking across the counter and sitting down in a plate of food, it has to say that in the title or people just won't click it. So my opinion is, well, if you've already told me what's going to happen in the video, why should I watch it?
Yeah.
So, I don't know that there is really any such thing as surprise anymore.
Let me speak to that. That sparked a few thoughts in my brain as you mentioned this. So the the story the story is sort of a set thing. Human beings, the stories like movies, stories have a beginning. They have the setup. They have, I don't know the specific. I mean, I have to go and look, but they have the introduction of characters, and then they have a conflict or various. There's a multitude of combinations, but from beginning to end, there's introduction of conflict because conflict is necessary in order to have solutions and develop characters and so on. And then at the fall off, you have resolution of the issues, and you're going to have a protagonist or a couple of, there's different combinations. You could have one protagonist, you could have multiple. There's combination switch ups, but in its essence, there's a format that is a cyclical throughout all of our lives. Every human being that will ever listen to, as far as I'm aware, to this point now, every human being that would listen to this could notice that there's a story contains these points, these different movements in it, like a song would contain movements and whatnot. And it applies for music as well. You could change up a bunch of stuff, but there's the beginning, the end. You have these conflict moments there's all these elements that are cyclical to human beings.
The hero's journey, yeah.
There's the hero's journey. There is zero, in my opinion, mystery because of the lay of the land, how the process. There is zero mystery. Pick a story throughout history, pick anything. It's all frickin' the same thing, except the details change. And even though that's the case, I get into a story totally, even though I know that protagonist, remember, for the most part, because you could switch little things up, but that protagonist is going to kind of be around. Even if that, let's say, a war movie, crap, they're surrounded and this and that. Well, we're, in the case of a movie, we're at like 5 minutes in, and he's going to be around. Now you can switch it up and say they shoot him and the story is about the wife that left. Well, that's because then the protagonist is the woman, but they're showing you the background. So there's no way around you can have movements within that, but you're going to have that protagonist in the continuum. There's no surprise, but we love the stories because there's that chance, that hope that, we've discovered new ground, but there's no new ground.
But there is surprise. And
I agree. That's what I'm saying. But I'm
surprised. What I'm getting, you have obviously never seen a movie called Von Ryan's Express.
No, I've not.
Okay, that would change your mind. There are several other movies that I can think of that follow along so I won't say the same formula, but do have the same element of surprise. Von Ryan's Express is one of them. The other was the 1990s remake of Maverick with Mel Gibson and James Garner and Jodie Foster.
Well, I've not seen those two movies that you mentioned.
But I gotta say right off the bat, if you do see them, these are the kind of movies that piss me off because you can only watch them once. Because once you know the whole story and you see it, it ruins the movie. They're both excellent films.
If it contains protagonists, it has to. In order for it to be a story, it's going to have conflict.
Yeah.
There's no escaping that.
Well, one is set in the Old West and the other is set in World War II. So, yeah, there's conflict.
So, and it could be interrelationship. It could be so many different things. It could be a story about a man reading a book and dreaming. See, there's always, sure, you could make a movie.
Right.
Doesn't follow anything. It's just like Andy Warhol, but that's not the story. that's not really, yes, you could do that, but that's not the case.
We're kind of focusing right now on the creative process. What I'm talking about is that part is done. We'll sit there and we'll scream, we don't want any spoilers. We don't want any spoilers. But if we don't have all the information up front, and we scream about movie trailers, giving away the plot of the movie in the trailer and showing all the best stuff in the trailer. But if they don't do that, you won't go see it. We have to have that information. That cat video has to be titled "Cat Walks Across the Counter and Sits Down on a Plate of Food," or we won't click that link. If they don't show the best parts of the movie in the trailer, we won't go see the movie. So I guess that's my broader question is, do we or do we not like surprise? Because we say we do. We want to be surprised. We don't want to see the same thing over and over again. But if we don't have some of it revealed to us, we won't go see it.
For a guy like you or your age, my age, that's been around a little bit at least, those trailers are death nails or nails in the coffin or, whatever. Because it's basically laying out the whole movie for you. And even though you might not get exact, you might not be able to, extract from it the total movie exactly. She went into a coffee store, this and that. But you pretty much get the gist of it. And there could be a twist here and there, but you pretty much, but for a young person that hasn't discovered yet the cyclical process of a story, to them, that's like
they want to see the explosions and the aliens and the spaceships and stuff.
And they don't know, yes, and they don't know that the basic story is revealing your characters, protagonists arise, conflicts begin to occur,
right.
And then as it progresses, there's resolution, whether good or bad or indifferent or whatever. But there's even things like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I liked the movie. I haven't read the book. But I look at that movie and I'm entertained, although there's, there's no set. It's a different type of movie, but at the end, the guy is looking for, he's a protagonist. And he's looking to resolve the conflicts, find a way out, discover the place where he could just. So there's these elements involved, but you can switch around the goals or the scenarios and stuff. But there's without those things involved, and you're saying these two movies don't have that element. And
I'm saying those two movies demonstrate the type of surprise that I'm talking about.
Gotcha.
Because in both of them, you think you have it figured out right up to the last 5 minutes of the film.
Okay, so there's a switch up.
You don't.
Okay, I get that. So there's a switch up. So that's good. See, those are the ones that are freaking awesome.
They are. They're excellent films. Both of them are excellent, but they ruin it. And maybe that's why they don't make too many of this type of a film, because it's once you've seen it, you will never be able to get as involved in it as you were the first time, because you know the end.
A good example for me is a good example as a kid was Star Wars, the original Star Wars. Young Luke Skywalker and the journey he's about to take. I can't say it's lame. It's freaking awesome, and it's childhood and whatnot. And I mean, it's part of, literally, it's part of one's makeup, because, but it's following but to a kid, it's like the most wild experience, but it's really not.
Well, imagine what it was like when, for us back then, I was 16 years old when it came out, and I saw it at a drive-in with a couple of friends, and we were absolutely blown away by that thing. We saw it at the drive-in. We're sitting there in this car looking up at this huge screen, and that opening scene when the credits go away and the camera kind of sort of moves down to that planet without the spaceships, just moving down to that planet. All three of us went, whoa.
Yeah.
We had never seen anything like that before. That was all completely brand new. I mean, they invented technology and filed patents to make that movie. An entire company was born to make that movie. And then when the spaceships came in, it was like, holy hell, this is cool. And the theme music was still playing.
Yeah.
You know, before that, special effects before that was go back and watch the original Jaws. You can tell it's a rubber shark.
But not me when I saw it. My dad took me to see it. I don't know if it was Jaws 2 or whichever one came out in the early 80s or late 70s. We went across the street here, drove there, but it's like 4 blocks away. And I sat down as a little kid and watched the horror of Jaws. And my dad was enjoying the crap out of it. And I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
I that day as a little kid,
Beach again.
I checked off the box that said beach, not good. I went click click. I learned I didn't know much of what's going on in life around me because I was a little kid, but I dude. Right. But so to me it was real.
Well, yeah, but you were a young kid. I mean, me as a 16, 17-year-old seeing that, it was like, look, it's a rubber shark. You can tell. I mean, they did good with what they had, but Star Wars completely outclassed everything that had been there before and that came after for quite a long time. And it was made the way it was made. Now it's kind of clunky. You look at it and you go, oh, yeah, well, you can see this and that and the other. But at the time, there was nothing like it. And it was made on its own. It was a fairly low budget film, even with all the technology they used. But it was made the way it was made because they didn't think there would ever be a second one. They made it to stand on its own in case it was a flop, and they never made a second one.
They sure kicked butt.
And it just nobody had any idea that it was going to be as big as it was.
I do want to mention that even though you and I are from, because it's mentioned different eras or whatnot.
Different decades, yeah.
Different decades. Eras is pushing it a little bit, but I do want to point out that is true, literally. But I do want to point out that, and maybe this is in part why we can on an ongoing basis communicate and this and that. Maybe that's one of the reasons.
Okay.
Is that you and I, although we have, whatever years apart, birthday wise, we share parents that were of the same era. Strangely enough.
Roughly yes. My mother was born in 43, my father in 44.
So my dad was born in 42. 42.
Yeah.
And my mom was then younger. So in reality, if it were a natural, although he was like 10 years older than my mom roughly, but in reality, if it were even Steven, my folks would have been more born at the beginning of the 50s for what my age is.
Yeah.
So I would have been, a child of people born in the 50s growing up in the hippie era. But that wasn't, my dad was way before the hippie era. And my mom was right on the cuffs of it. She was born into it. So she literally was of the hippie era, let's say.
She was the Beat generation. I grew up in the hippie era.
Okay, so she was a little bit 10, yeah.
She would have been, let's see. She was born, you said 51?
Yeah.
She would have been 10 years old when I was born. So, yeah, she would have been right around, she would have been the hippie era, the hippie age.
Yeah.
Because, 67, 68, 69. So she would have been like 16, 17, 18, right along in. Yeah.
Yeah, in that era. She was of that era, let's put it that way.
Right.
But my dad was a different story. So he was, so he would have been, well, whatever. The point is that we have that offset of the people that informed us. At least that's in my mind. I'm thinking so that kind of brings us a little bit closer than not. There's not that large of a gap, although it's large in many for many less life lessons, let's say, and experience wise and whatnot. But it's not that incredible of a thing if you look at it that way.
But you have that curiosity to go back and look at the older stuff that most people don't. I have that curiosity as well. For many, many years, my favorite movie of all time was American Graffiti, which takes place in 1962. So I'd have been a year old. I was in love with the early 60s and the 50s. I got into old movies all the way back into the silent film era and watched everything I could. It just really interested me, the way folks lived, the way they did things without the conveniences I thought we had then, and just the storylines, the comedy, the style, the drama, the murder mysteries, the Alfred Hitchcock suspense films, not just slasher and blood and gore and guts like in Psycho, but the psychological thrillers, and the detective stories and film noir and things like that just always intrigued me and entranced me.
Yeah.
And the kids my age thought I was weird because, they all wanted to go see, I'm 6, 7, 8 years old. They all wanted to go see For the Love of Benji. And I'm like, no, I don't want to watch that. I want to go see My Name is Nobody. I want to go see A Fistful of Dollars. I want to go see that stuff, So
yeah.
It was just weird at the time. So I don't know, maybe it's that nostalgia for something I didn't live and experience myself. But I don't know. At the time, I didn't really think about it all that much. I didn't search for any kind of meanings. All I knew is that I was growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area in the 60s, and the stuff that was happening now didn't interest me.
Yeah.
I liked what was. So I would dive headfirst into a Marx Brothers movie if I could, and come up for air when I had to. Looking back on it now, growing up in that area at that turbulent time was really an experience. I wish I'd have paid a little more attention to some of the things, but I was a kid,
Right. You didn't take it all as much in as you. Yeah. Because you can't, because you're of that era.
I listened to the music. I thought it was great. It was just normal for me. Creedence Clearwater was on the radio. Dad was bringing home Creedence Clearwater albums and playing them in the living room. But
they weren't legends until...
Right. They were still new.
It became, and that's the cool thing too, it becomes what it becomes. That's the cool thing. It becomes what it becomes. And for people like me, looking at the 60s that I didn't experience, I became a student of it in that small way within the context of music. To me, it was an interesting thing because, it was something I didn't have access to in real. So I think it's a cyclical, each generation, and there's a handful of people in the world that enjoy that because of their personality style or whatever. And those are the people that are the saving grace for conserving the history and the past of things. And they'll end up being experts on the 60s, write a book, even though they were born in 1985. Right. And, because they gather all the documentation. It's no replacement for an actual honest to goodness, like Mummy from 1965 telling you how it was. But at that point, so it's a cool, yeah.
But that curiosity is a fabulous thing because some people don't want to be told how it was. They want to read about it themselves and discover.
Mm-hmm.
Because I can tell you what I remember of the time, but I wasn't writing it down as it happened. Other people did. Abby Hoffman and Jack Kerouac, guys like that, Ken Kesey, they wrote down what they did. And by going back and reading those books and seeing their films and looking at it through their eyes, you get a better perspective than anything I could ever tell you.
Yeah.
So having that curiosity and the willingness to go back and take a look at some of the other stuff. I mean, you saw Star Wars. It was already 10 years old by the time you saw it, right?
I saw it, like, if not 1970, whenever it was in the theaters in my era, when I was able to see it. I think it was either 1979 or 1980, thereabouts.
Okay, because it came out in 77.
Okay.
And so you were 2, I was 16, and it played through a couple of times because, I mean, it took off.
Whatever that reposting of it, or reposting, whatever.
I don't know that it ever went away in some markets because, I mean, it exploded. It was one of the biggest things to hit worldwide. It was, people don't get how big that film was. It's kind of cute and campy now. I mean, and I'm talking special effects wise and what have you, but it was so mind blowing at the time that the theater owners didn't want it to end because people just kept coming to see it and kept coming and kept coming. And then the merch started coming out. And I mean, you had Star Wars, everything from, frozen dinners to notebooks to take to school. If you could put Darth Vader or Luke Skywalker or May the Force be with you on it, it was for sale. And it was everywhere.
I can pinpoint with exact accuracy right now, because I just did and I think I've told you the story before, at least the second time I saw it.
Okay.
Because I saw it one time before that. And yes, I was a little kid. When the second time I saw it was literally when the movie Annie had originally come out. I don't know what year it was. If somebody could find it, I'll look for it. But I remember when Annie came out, because my aunt and uncle, boyfriend at the time, said, "We're gonna take your I want to take my nephew." She told my mom, "I want to take my nephew to see Annie. It's going to be it's about the little girl orphan, this and that. He's going to love it." They took me to see Annie. We got to the thing. I was a little kid. I was a little thing. What year was it?
1982.
1982. They took me to see Annie, holding on to my aunt and uncle's hands. And we got to the thing, and I saw this huge poster of Star Wars that they had that playing, and I proceeded to create the biggest fit because I didn't want to see that little girl in the red dress. I wanted to see Star Wars explosions, and I said, "No, Star Wars, Star Wars!" And they were doing what you call training on with a kid, like. They were younger than my mom and dad, and so they were taking me out so that they could feel how, and experience, as well.
Kids in the movies, yeah.
Yeah, and so that, because they were going to have their family and such, and so I was always like their first child, let's say, in that respect. And I did created such a fit that she said, "Okay, we're going to see Star Wars then." And I remember looking up with a smile to my, then it wasn't my uncle, but would be my uncle eventually, smiling like, "Yeah." And he looked at me, he went like this, look like that,
Just you little son of a.
Yeah, like that venom eye squinting look. He looked at me like, you little brat. And I looked at him and I realized what it was. He didn't even have to say, I was a little kid and I knew what that look meant. Well, guess what? I was happy watching Star Wars. They were pissed. That was the second time I'd seen Star Wars. I was a little kid. So 1982.
Yep, 82, you were 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And my father took me so many before that since I was little. I mean,
Oh,
he took me to so many movies. It was just awesome.
May of 82, according to Al over there at Kilroy's Odessa Woodworking and Maker Shop. May 21st, 1982. May 21st, 1982, I was already through basic training. I was stationed at Fort Ord, California. I was married and had 2 kids.
That's amazing. Mark.
I'm an old poop.
No, well, if you think about it, that's because that's a long time ago.
Yeah. I was 21.
You were 21, dude. I was what? How old?
7.
I was 7 years old, dude. Think about that. That's an incredible. Now, it's an amazing thing to just think about that.
Yeah. My oldest daughter was 4.
Plus that to add insult to injury. But you started super early.
Well, yeah. I just, upheld the family tradition. I was married at 17.
That is a quick,
Yeah, it is.
drive down the hot. Let's go. Come on, everybody.
So were my parents. My mom was 18. My dad was 17. Yeah.
See, that's a thing that's an interest. And people back then, well, whatever. I think. Look, I'm gonna stop here because we've gone and we're breaching the time continuum here.
That's cool. That's fine. All right.
Yeah.
And we went the entire hour and a half and never mentioned the fact that I got a haircut today. Finally.
Oh, that's see.
I got to tell you, this whole COVID thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, sitting in the barber's chair with a mask on was weird enough. But watching how they did it, because I was thinking to myself, all right, you call yourself a barber. Let's see how good you are. Because I brought in a challenge. I had a mop on this head. I mean, I'm 5 pounds lighter. And I sat down in the chair and I pulled out my business card from 2 years ago. And I said, if you can find this guy somewhere underneath all this crap, you're doing very well. She looked at it and went, okay. I said, everybody loves a challenge. She says, well, you give me one. And off we went.
That's funny. Well, I'm sure they know because they've had clients that haven't got their hair cut. Did you cut your hair all year this year?
They went back and checked their records. The last time we were in, I got a haircut was March 6th.
Oh, wow.
And they were closed down for several months. So here it is as we record this, September 22nd. I mean, 6 months.
No, I'm with you. I need to do a haircut like nobody's business, but that's we'll leave that for the next episode.
That's right.
So let's take this out.
Okay. How do you want to do it?
I think that if you have the words to say, hit us with it.
The only thing I'll say is stop on off over at now see, I already messed it up. The only thing I'll say is head over to our Facebook page, Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook, and leave us some show suggestions. Give us a thumbs up, a thumbs down, a thumb off to the side. It doesn't matter which direction. Come on over there and check out what we've got. When we mention videos, stories, pictures, things of that nature, we'll post them over there so you can get your eyes on it, see exactly what we're talking about. That's Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook.
TrampledUnderfootPodcast.com. Later, y'all. Oh, I have to say more.
No, I just wondered what the heck that was. Say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night. We're also sponsored by Harneal Media. That's harnealmedia.com. Check it out for all your podcasting needs. Damn, dude. I was going to say for all your podcasting needs with Harneal Media.
He could probably hook him up with that too. Steve is the man.
Nice save. So go check out harnealmedia.com for all your webpage, website needs. We're going to have to cut this part.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing you did it right the first time because we can,
Okay, cool. So you guys, peace. We're out of here. Darn.
Have a good one.